good morning and welcome everybody. For those of you who are in other parts of the world, good evening or good afternoon to our East Coast members, and good evening to our members in the Europe. And we are glad to have our members from Australia. I know it's pretty early in there, so thank you for getting up so early in the morning. Today, our webinar is on presentation, or rather how to grab attention with presentation. And we have a great presenter, Linda Gross, who had very kindly agreed to do the webinar for us. So let me actually share with you how to use our new webinar platform. If we can move just one more slide up, Linda. There are a couple of things that you need to remember. One is the mic and speakers versus telephone. You can use the telephone if you want to, but mic and speakers, if you're on it, will be suffice. And make sure that it is checked. The second thing is, while the presentation is on, you may want to click on this arrow button so you can collapse the control panel itself. And then if you want to ask questions, just ask questions using the question box in here. We'll probably answer the questions after the webinar, so that once the webinar is over, Linda would be happy to answer any of those questions. So without taking too much of your time, let me turn this over to Linda Gross, who is going to do our webinar today. Linda, do you want to just introduce yourself briefly before we get on? Most of you are probably familiar with our website, smallbusinesscenter.com. This is how you're going to register for our upcoming webinar. Notice that there is no E in the end of center. It is just CENTR. And if you have not yet a member of our LinkedIn group, you may want to join our LinkedIn group, Small Business Accelerator. We already have over 6,500 members, and we are having some great discussions there. So without any further ado, go ahead, and Linda.
Great. Thanks so very much, Rehan. Well, welcome everyone, and I'm thrilled and honored to be here as part of the Small Business Center. Today's webinar is on sales presentations that grab your audience. My name is Linda Gross, and I am the founder of Impact Communications. I've been a consultant and coach in the computer world and consulting world and communication world for pretty much the past 30 years. We are a group of communication specialists, and our goal is to always make sure that we are able to translate your ideas into messages that inspire and grab your audience. So today's session is really, I want to focus and drill it down to 3 simple, easy ways in which you can grab your audience's attention. I want to show you how you can go about engaging your audience. How many times have you sat in a presentation and within the first 5 minutes you're already feeling that sinking sensation in the pit of your stomach? Oh no, how am I going to make it through this next half hour, 45 minutes, etc. So I want to show you ways in which you can avoid creating that sensation and actually engage your audience very quickly. Then I'm going to take you through and show you how you can not only engage them so that they're sitting up and listening to you, but how you can actually connect with people deeply, and some of the reasons why that is so very important. And then this is where a lot of presentations actually stop. They're quite satisfied to get their message across, but I have said that this is actually about sales presentations, which means you presumably want people to do something, like buy something, do something, so you want to motivate people. So that's going to be the third thing that we look at in today's session, is how do you actually motivate people so that they go ahead and do the action that you want them to do. We know that every day there are millions and millions of presentations being given across North America, and the main focus of those presentations is to sell. It may be selling products, that's the most common one, but there's also policies. When an HR department implements a new policy, they are actually selling that new policy to their clients, to their employees. When we produce status reports as a project manager on a let's say at some sort of project, we're giving status reports, we're selling people on our progress, how well we've done, what the challenges are, what we've overcome. If we're doing politics, of course, as we've just seen south of the border here, that is a huge selling job, getting across their point of view. Even education can be considered selling, where in a presentation you are presenting a particular perspective, idea, way of looking at something. So selling isn't just dollars and cents. In this webinar, I'm encouraging everybody to broaden that definition of selling to being anything where you really, if you take a look at it, your goal in selling is to help your audience, make it easy for them to do whatever the action is that you want them to do, to believe it, to adopt it, and yes, of course, to purchase it. So that's what this webinar is about, is how can you accomplish that? Well, I've seen over the years, many years of working with people's presentations, I've seen how the traditional presentation sort of starts off looking like this, where people have an agenda and they start off with introductions and history, all about their company, what their company does, blah, 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 blah. All very well intentioned, but the flaw in this type of presentation is that most people think that telling is selling. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard somebody say, well, I just want to give them some information. Well, the concern with just giving information is that you are simply telling, and that doesn't actually engage, connect, and motivate people. So I do want to take just a moment here and get a little bit of feedback from our viewers and participants. Want to know, what is your typical reaction when somebody tries to sell you something? And again, you can use that text box down below the questions to type in your response to what is your typical reaction when somebody tries to sell you something.
Right, so as Linda suggested, if you want to type in your answers, I will then share that with Linda. I'm not sure, Linda, if you can see the question and answers, but...
all right, I can pull them up here, and I'm not seeing too much.
Okay.
Are you getting any?
I am not getting any either, okay. So I guess...
All right, so we've got a bit of a quiet audience this morning. Very well. All right. Well, feel free to jump in because, of course, this is your webinar. We want to make it as interactive as possible. But what we do know, and in working again with hundreds and hundreds of presentations over the years, that roughly 65% of people these days feel that they are being constantly bombarded with just way too much information, too much marketing and advertising, and they actually consider it to be out of control. So you, my friends, have a very big challenge in front of you. The challenge of an audience that is typically highly skeptical, somewhat informed. They don't know necessarily all the information that you know, and they are quite resistant to being marketed to. Your job then is to persuade that audience, to influence them, to be able to see your point of view. And you want to do it in a way that builds trust and understanding and lowers your audience's resistance. That is when they are most likely to take action. So how do you do this? How do you get past audience resistance and skepticism? Well, you have at your disposal the number one ability to engage your audience quickly. This massive engagement tool is really very simple. You make your presentation all about them. You want to be focusing all the time on the benefits for them. Every sentence and every statement is going to be, how does this benefit them? Know their interests. How does this affect their interests? And you want to really be intimately aware of their concerns and their issues. If you're not, you want to go out and find people that are constituents or representatives of your audience and find out, what is it that you worry about? What are your concerns? and make sure that your presentation addresses those issues. In other words, you want to be able to really and truly step into their shoes and see the world from their point of view. Well, maybe their shoes aren't as ugly as these, but nonetheless, you get my point that in talking from your audience's point of view, you are talking about what they care about. You're structuring it around a single key message which gets repeated and reinforced throughout this presentation. Your presentation is really a guide through your logic. It's not just simply a bunch of data and a lot of details, but rather a way that you can step your audience through what your thoughts and reasoning are. So let me give you an example. This is a marketing presentation that a client of ours presented us with. This is the before. Of course, I've taken out their logos and their company name to preserve confidentiality. But this is what the first page of their presentation was. It was a history about who they are, and they wanted people to know that they'd been around for a while and that they were respected and that they had a very strong focus on relationships. So that's what they told people. Well, as I've said, telling isn't necessarily selling. So then the second page of their presentation, they wanted people to know that they were large enough in order to handle a number of different areas. Well, this is where we start to make assumptions here. In saying that they have 275 employees, they're assuming that people are going to connect the dot and go, oh, I guess they have a lot of capacity. But that's not necessarily what people are going to take out of that. Some people may not even really pay attention to the 275. Some people may think, oh, they're not very big, or the opposite, they're too small. Or my point in this is you don't necessarily know how people are going to interpret something. So if you want them to know that you have capacity to do this, that's exactly what you have to say. Then they also wanted to show people that they were capable of handling large projects, anything from a small project to a large project. So they put this down without a lot of explanation on how that made them able to do things. Their third slide, excuse me, detailed the kind of services that they did. So they wanted to show people all the various things that they could do. And this was exactly what their presentation looked like. White background, company logo, company name, things like that. Well, if we take a look at some of the things that could be changed here, as I said, in telling people what your details are, you've got some key facts here that are being pulled out. One of my number one rules and recommendations is to reduce the amount of text on your slides. Take a look at what are the key points that you want people to focus in on. When you have text on the slide, first thing people do, just as you've been doing right now, is to read the slide. We can't help it. We're hardwired for that. So in reading the slides, you've lost people's attention. They're paying more attention to the slide than they're paying attention to you. To get around that, I want to pull out exactly the key points, these three that I've indicated. And by applying a little bit of color, which was taken right from their website and taken from their all of their materials that they had paid a lot of money for a designer to create, now I take and I think about what is important to the client. Rather than me telling them about my details, the number one thing that they wanted to focus on in this presentation was how they can be trusted and respected. They are trustworthy and they are highly respectful. So let's put that in. Then we put in a little bit of information about how long they've been around. One of the things that I find with presentations is that people give way too much information. Your presentation is designed to be a taste. It's not the whole banquet. It's just a taste of what you can do for them, and you want to leave them curious, interested, and wanting more information. If you give too much information up front, you've turned them off. So by just giving a small piece of information that gives, as in here, the idea of how long they've been around, now we have that sense of longevity without having buried the audience with a lot of additional details. We save that detail for when they're sitting in the office talking to us, when they have questions for us in our second and our third encounters. So your presentation is designed to give a small taste. Very few sales transactions actually occur during the presentation. You're getting the person primed for the sale, not actually transacting the sale in the presentation. So then they wanted to be able to say how large they were. And again, that was all jammed in the first slide. So what we did is 1 point per slide. The first slide was the trust and respect. Now this slide, I can tell them the exceptional amount of achievements that we've incurred. And if necessary, we can stop at this point and discuss this with the audience, give extra illustrations, extra information, but we're not bogging them down in a lot of detail here in our presentation. So the first page changed from being a lot of text to being 2 separate slides that actually focused on that specific information, 1 message per slide, and didn't bury the audience in too much information. If we look at their second slide, excuse me, the one that talked about capacity, I find that the word capacity was, not very engaging. Was there another word that we could build? Was there another word that we could use? Well, we could change this to how we can serve you. So again, it's more from the point of view of looking at the audience and what is the audience interested in, and using a single word to say that we're experienced, and then putting in some points to illustrate how they're experienced. Also, we could put it in a different way. We could, rather than just making a list, we could put words into a graphic shape. So this is something that I'll be talking in the next section, is how visuals can really strongly reinforce your message. So a list is good, much better than sentences, but having words in a graphic shape convey your message at a glance much more quickly. Their third slide talked about the services that they could provide. So again, not a bad list, not bad as far as not a lot of words, but let's see how we can improve on that, make that a little stronger message so we can say that we're very diverse, and then show the ways in which we can accomplish a number of different things. Better yet, this is not a bad idea, this is a good idea, but if we take it up a notch, why not put those images, put some images to work and actually show images of their company doing these various services. So one of the things that I'd like you to consider is that when you're giving a presentation, of course, your knowledge is like a rain barrel full of information. You have tons of information that you have studied and become aware of in your experience, and your audience has about a shot glass worth of capacity. So you want to focus your message very tightly on what can they absorb in this one session. How do you know that you're overflowing their capacity? When you see slides like this, where you are describing information, I can tell you from years of experience, describing always creates too much text. So if I want to summarize our step number 1 on how to engage an audience quickly, We know that what we want to do is to be talking from their point of view all the time. Establish a key message. Focus it so that there is one point that you are wanting to communicate. Use minimal text and get to that point quickly. So Rayhan, why don't we take a moment right now and see if anybody in the audience has any questions?
I don't see any questions coming in. George and Alan did answer the question that you had asked earlier,
Okay.
which was essentially they will either stop listening or they will give them an opportunity to present. But yes, it will,
Yeah.
So essentially you answered those questions. Yeah, so go ahead and move on.
Great. Thanks very much. All right. Well, in our 3 steps to grab an audience's attention, after you've engaged your audience so that they are at least listening to you, the next step is to connect with them. You want to create rapport. Your job at this point is to create a sense with your audience, a sense of possibility, the possibility that yes, your product will improve their life, their work, their situation, to create some hope that there is a solution for their problem, their challenge, whatever it is that they're struggling with, that you potentially have an answer for. And you want to inspire them to be able to see how life, work, their situation can be better with the product or the idea that you are presenting. In order to accomplish this, you want to discover the world of visuals and graphics. This is one of the biggest misconceptions that people have around visuals and graphics. I can't tell you the number of times I hear people say, oh, that's just about making it look pretty. That couldn't be further from the truth. There are numerous studies and scientific reports that prove the value of visual processing, how very much engaged our brains are with what we see. And the more that you can present your information in the way that people perceive information, the faster you're going to be able to connect with them. The studies show that 75% of the information that you know was taken in visually. That only 13% of what you know is taken in through listening. And the rest of what you know, the other 12%, is taken in through the other senses of smell, touch, taste, etc. So if 75% of what you know has been taken in visually, shouldn't that be also something that we use as we try to connect with people? Are those visual skills? I want you to consider that this is actually how your audience's brain functions. The brain has 2 sides to it, the right side and the left side. We're very familiar with the left side. It is that logical, details, numerical part that takes care of the everyday steps that keeps us functional. The right brain, however, is the very creative, the very intuitive, this is where the arts come from, this is where intuition comes from, this is where connecting dots can actually occur at a subconscious level, and during a presentation, it can be the way in which you powerfully connect with people. This is what PowerPoint's real job is. Its real job is to take all that information on the left side of the brain, to take all that analytical, highly organized information that is listening to you and connect it with the right side of your brain. So people want to have, if you're presenting to an audience, you want to be able to connect people's right brain that's watching you with their left brain that's listening to you. That's why your presentations need to be visual. They're looking at something. They're watching you. So why not have your presentation do some extra work for you and actually connect with your audience's emotion or more intuitive side? I'm wondering if in our audience we've got any people who are quite aware of right brain thinking. I'm wondering if we've got any creative types, if we've got people who know that when they are working on a problem, struggling with an issue, if they consciously take time to not look at data and go for a walk, listen to some music, do something that actually inspires them to be able to get through a mental block. Do we have any responses there, Rehan, on people that are tapping into their right brain thinking?
Yes, Larry said he likes to daydream.
Yeah.
And that's a good one, actually.
That's very constructive. I mean, parents are really learning now that when they're chastising their children and saying, stop daydreaming, parents are learning that they're actually cutting off a very deep source of inspiration. So great recognition that that's a very powerful right brain thinking.
And Nicole says she likes to dance.
Excellent. So to be able to bring in some of that kinesthetic ability, the movement with the chance to reflect and think again at a subconscious level, which is very powerful, breaks free of linear logical thinking that doesn't always have the answer. Very great.
And Manwa said that she likes to read a novel.
Oh, very great. So to actually take herself out of the current reality she's in that could be constrained by very logical, tight-laced thinking or linear approach to a problem and immerse herself in another world that doesn't necessarily have those same constraints. So you start to see the sense, you get a sense of how being able to break free of logical constraints is actually the source of inspiration and being able to break through barriers, that whole thinking out of the box. Very great. Great responses. Well, the number one consideration that I'd like you to have when you're creating a presentation, keeping that in mind, that we want our audience to not just listen to our proposal or ideas from a linear thinking point of view, we also want them to be able to connect the dots at a subconscious level. So we want to really have their right brain thinking engaged. So this is the point to consider, that PowerPoint is not for you at all. It is entirely for your audience. The number of people that I see using PowerPoint as their teleprompter or their visual script is quite, it's an unfortunate use of a product that could do so much more. It could become your number one tool in persuading and influencing an audience by using the visual aspect of PowerPoint to connect to that right brain thinking and influence and motivate people. Very great. I'm going to show another example. This is an example that I've taken from the internet. A lot of companies will use their web material as part of their presentation. So I know that, quite often people are strapped for time and, hey, there's a whole bunch of information about our company on our website. Why don't we just cut and paste that and put it onto our presentation? All the information's there. Not a bad thought, but unfortunately now, understanding how too much text actually reduces your chances of engaging an audience, we can see that there's some real issues with this. What we want to do is, yes, look at the information on our website, as I have with this person. I just borrowed this from the internet. They are not a client. And find the key points that we can use to persuade our audience. So yes, great information there. What are the key points? Well, I've highlighted them in yellow, and maybe rather than just cutting and pasting that, what we could do, what this company could do, is create a short fact sheet. So now we're narrowing down and creating a much tighter focus. Remember that rain barrel of information that your website has and that you have, and you're now creating a small, focused piece of information that will fit in a shot glass. You could take this one step further, and rather than just simply using words, better yet, why not engage the audience with visuals and show each of those points as a picture? And again, I've just grabbed these randomly off the website, off of the internet, but presumably on your website or within your organization, you would have pictures that illustrate the various points that you want to make. You show the picture and you, the presenter, expand upon the ideas, actually get your audience talking. What a novel concept. Interact with the audience. Stop and pause just as we have right now and give people an opportunity to voice their thoughts with you. That's going to create a deeper, richer experience. Now, while I'm talking about pictures here, I want to take just a couple of moments to pass along some key pieces of information that I think may be useful, particularly around free images. I'd like to mention that anything that you find on Google is not free for you to use. True, it doesn't cost money, but those images most of the time have copyrights and people have ways of finding that you've used them. So you do want to be very careful about using free images. Go to some of the paid sites, for example, Dreamstime, and you will see that they have a number of free images for you to use. In this case, they have over 493 free images that they give you permission to use. So when it comes to free images, you do want to be careful about not just taking stuff out of Google Images, but go to other locations that will provide images royalty-free or copyright-free. Then, of course, there are actually paid sites where you can, or images that are that you can purchase, and often you can purchase them for only $1. You can go to iStock Photo with the small size. You don't need to buy anything bigger than the extra small or small, because you're going to stretch it a little bit to fit your slide. You can pay $1, $2, $3, and now you've got a very awesome picture that is royalty-free. You can even take your own photos, zoom in on those photos, crop and blur and edit. These actual techniques on how you do this is a lot of what I'm going to be showing in the Magnificent Makeovers. How can you actually do that? For now, the purpose of this presentation, this webinar, is to show you why you need to do that. And then in the second one, we can show you how to actually do some of that. So your job now is to be showing people instead of telling. Remember that I mentioned a few slides ago that whenever you have a lot of information that is describing instead of telling that you've got too much, pick out your couple of key points. What is it that you want to focus on? And then use an image. And you provide all that additional information in the talking. Better yet, put some of your words into graphic shapes. Text boxes with words in them are a very, very effective way of focusing people's attention. So here's one more gold-plated tip when it comes to connecting deeply with your audience. We know that, first of all, we want to use visual images to be able to convey that information. The next piece of connection technique that we want to use is use stories to create rapport. If you are going to prove a point, if you want to prove something, what do most people do? They usually bury the audience in lots of data, numbers, charts. They want to show how much something has changed, etc., etc., etc. The result often of these charts and mind-numbing graphs is an audience that is not motivated or inspired. Potentially they are even bored, not interested, or worse yet, annoyed. Here's the surprising truth about numbers. Data and logic, these do not sell. The way in which you sell people is to be able to have them personalize your information. Once people can have an emotional reaction, they can see themselves doing this, using this, that's where the selling ability comes in. That's where they have mentally purchased your product. That is achieved through right brain thinking. People use data and logic to validate and substantiate their decisions. The actual decision is made at an emotional level. So why tell stories? Because the power of stories, and these are two very, very great books, one by Annette Simons and the other one by Jim Holche. Stories will lower people's resistance. They connect with people. They deliver complex messages. Think of all the fairy tales that we tell our children to teach complex messages about strangers and not going away with strangers and working hard and not waiting for winter, do it now. All sorts of complex messages that we give on, that we pass along to our children in the form of stories. Whoever is listening to a story then forms their own conclusion, which is very powerful. So a lot of people ask me, how do you bring a story into a business presentation? Well, it's as simple as making a simple segue that says, that reminds me of a story, and then you share something about yourself, an example where you did something exceptional for a client or using that product. If you don't have any of your own stories to tell, you could ask around and showcase examples around you. So you would be saying, that reminds me of the time where John did such and such, and you share a story about somebody using that product or using that belief. If you don't have any of your own stories and you don't have anyone to showcase, you can borrow stories. You can turn to movers and shakers in your industry, sports analogies, gurus, and share stories about them. So the more times you can bring a story into to illustrate or back up your data, your logic, your information you're giving, the more you're going to connect with people. So let's take a moment and see if you have a value that you want to have your audience identify with about your company. Things like you want them to know you're honest, or that your company is, has integrity, or, that you're trustworthy, conscientious. Which ones would you want your audience most to identify? What would you like people to know about your company? Do we have any responses there, Rehan?
Not yet. Capability is one.
Great. Capability is a great one, that you're actually able and capable of fulfilling on that which you promise.
Service and education.
Very great. Good. You want them to know that you are able to provide great service.
Committed to protecting the environment.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And it's one thing to say it, but how do you tell people, trust us, trust me to be that protector of the environment? Words will say it, but how do they actually believe it? Well, unfortunately, what a lot of people do is use a lot of words, and that's what I call sales fluff. You can see in this paragraph, which I'll give you just a few seconds to digest, a lot of words. They're talking about their service here, that they are a company that has leadership and they're very responsible, but they've used a lot of words, and what I think they're trying to say is they provide superior service. They set the bar high, which I'm not sure really what they mean by that. And they're telling me they're fiscally responsible, but why do I care about that? And how does that, again, affect me? You want to talk to the reader and you want to talk to the audience, and how does this affect them in you being fiscally responsible? So I know they're trying to tell me something here, but I'm not sure what. Let's see how we could translate that. If we take these items and look to what have we actually done, we can use previous work that we've done as proof. So that concept of superior service that they were talking about, why don't we pull out an example where we have provided superior service and then actually show them pictures of that environment. So this was a very interesting case where a legal firm needed to have a very specialized workflow done. And my client now had a wonderful opportunity to talk about how they bent over backwards to take care of this legal firm, and again have the pictures there so that you can reinforce and connect to people's emotions while telling the story. So rather than just say we give superior service, show it. Rather than just say an expression like we set the bar high, we don't know that everybody in the audience understands that. We may have language barriers. We may have generational barriers. We don't know that they are really getting the full meaning of what we mean around setting the bar high. So in this case, a client of mine was able to say that they took a very challenging, very difficult construction job and really they won an award for this, and they solved it, and they are able to go through and showcase a couple of ways in which they set the bar high. Again, dot that I, cross that T. And when they were talking about being fiscally responsible, what they were pointing to is that in very challenging situations, they manage their budgets so tightly, there are zero cost overruns. And that's what they were able to do with a particular project that it was 22 months long and had a number of different factors, winter and transportation issues. Costs changed by as much as 25% in any given month, and they still delivered on time and on budget. So rather than using just words, which is a real temptation for many of us, use examples and tell stories, combine it with visuals, and now you have actually created a scenario where people can be engaged and connected with you. So just to summarize that, use visuals as much as possible to stimulate your audience's right brain activity. Use really plain, clear English so that you're not confusing people with jargon. Show as much as possible instead of telling, and add some stories for people's faster buy-in. Now, what I've seen and what our company sees a lot with presentation development is most people stop right there. They connect and they engage their audience, and then they leave it. But really, what is it that typically you want people to do after they've attended one of your presentations? Rayhan, maybe we can see if we've got any responses from the audience. Once you give a presentation, what do people typically want the audience to do?
Right. So I'm not getting any answers back quite yet.
Well, I'm going to suggest that probably what we want to do is motivate them to some sort of action.
Congratulate you is one of the answers that came back.
Okay.
Buy or buy in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, rather than, thank you. Nice feedback is valuable because then I know at least I haven't annoyed them. But more importantly, what my presentation is for is exactly that, to get some sort of action where maybe they're signing up at the back of the room to buy something or attend something. I want them to call me to take that next step in the purchasing cycle. Again, presentations don't actually generate the income there. Very few presentations generate the sale there. It is the door opener for additional conversation, additional contact with you. Maybe you want them to go shop on your website. These are actions that you want people to take, and so you want to lead them by the hand and take them through these steps. This is where, again, you can use visuals extremely well, where you could show pictures of the sign-up table. You could show your phone number. You could actually show pictures of your website so that people can see, oh, I go here, and I go here. So I strongly encourage you to consider what's the next step you want people to take and use your visuals to step them through that. Another great tool to use is client testimonials, where you are actually showing people other people have used your services and how much they enjoyed that. So you could put this right in your presentation, and now you have people seeing that you are successful. Other people have also purchased this. Some other motivators to call people to action: give free samples, or put a time limit on things, put a time discount, create an early bird pricing structure. What you want to do is give people some incentive to buy now or engage with you now. Bundle packages. So creating that call to action, very, very key component. And let's take a look at what all three components are that will actually allow you to successfully grab your audience's attention. Number one is engaging with them quickly by talking from your audience's point of view and establishing a key message. Use as little text as possible and get to the point quickly. Once you've engaged them, you want to make sure you're connecting with them as deeply as possible by using lots of visuals. Stimulate that right brain activity. Speak in clear English, avoiding jargon as much as possible, and avoid describing. You want to show instead of tell people. Use stories for faster buy-in. And most importantly, create that call to action. Create an action that you want them to do and motivate them to do that. Make it as easy as possible for them to take that action by using client testimonials. Your goal here is to create some urgency around purchasing, not pressure, but some urgency so they don't put it off. One last thought that I'd like you to consider is that there are a lot of resources out there. I know that presentations, better presentations are a big buzzword today, that engaging our audiences is very important. And there's lots of information out there on the web and in books. These are three of my favorite resources: Slideology by Nancy Duarte, Beyond Bullet Points by Cliff Atkinson, and Jerry Weissman's gold-selling book, Presenting to Win. There's lots and lots of information out there. I'd like to suggest that you could look at using an organization like ours where we create practical solutions. Save time rather than you going out there and researching it. Consider learning through coaching. We coach people all the time, and one of the ways that I'd like you to get a taste of that coaching is to find out, how do your presentations stack up now? I'm offering all participants of this webinar a free assessment on a presentation so you can find out how your presentation scorecard looks. We have a scorecard, kind of like a report card, that goes through the 4 critical aspects of a presentation, and we'll give you a score. And then not only that, but we will provide recommendations for free on how you can improve the impact of your presentation. So you can send us an email. Here's my email address, lgross@impactcoms.biz. Send me a PDF or send me an email, and I'll give the instructions to you on how you can send me a copy of your presentation and get your free assessment and scorecard. I'd really like to thank the Small Business Center for hosting us today to allow us to present this webinar on how to grab your audience. And I'd also like to thank you, the audience, for your interest and attendance. We are going to send you a feedback survey, and once you complete that survey on today's webinar, we can send you a PDF of these slides so that you've got that for future reference. Rehan, really, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to deliver this webinar to your group today.
Thank you for doing it, Linda. It's been great, and certainly a good learning for me. I hope the audience also, or the members also, enjoyed that. We do have a question from Larry here. He asked, what would be different when the presentation is a workshop or meant to provide information or instruction to the audience?
Very great question. Thanks. I see this a lot. One of the so again, in education, you are, if you want to consider selling an idea, a point of view, how to do something better, improve techniques, new knowledge, etc. One of the areas that I see education getting a bit bogged down is copying all the text that comes out of textbooks or comes out of their material and putting it on the slide because they want that to be a handout. My recommendation is use these principles in your presentation and have a separate handout with all the words, the numbers, the instructions that you want people to be able to retain after the presentation.
Great, thanks for that. There are a couple of other questions coming in, and a couple of people are thanking you, George and Larry and Alan. Thank you for it. Here it was. Right, so Alan's point is this was great, like some of the movies that you watch it over and over. This presentation needs to be watched over and over and used every point of it. So obviously your presentation was great, Linda. Thank you for that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I am not seeing any other questions coming in. Linda and I will just wait a few more seconds in case there is a question. But if you do have a question, feel free to contact Linda directly at her email address, again, at lgross@impactcoms.biz, or at her phone number if you want to call her. If you, as Linda suggested, we will email you the slides once you have completed the survey, which I will send out right after this webinar is over. And I will also include Linda's email address as well in case you have missed it. Let's see. Again, Larry's asking, what do you think of Prezi? Are you familiar with Prezi, Linda?
I haven't worked with it mainly because I have so much work with people that are doing, the majority of my clients still function in Microsoft Office.
Right.
So yeah, I haven't worked with it. Again, these principles apply to any presentation. It doesn't have to be PowerPoint. I use these principles with my teenager, how I think from her point of view. When I want her to do something that's challenging, I put myself into her point of view. I connect with her deeply, and then I also find ways to motivate her. So, that goes, from one range of presentation to a business audience through the whole gamut of another kind of presentation in a strictly verbal family situation. The principles are the same. The tool that you use to incorporate it is at your discretion.
That's an interesting segue to what George is asking, is what types of clients respond best to presentation? I'm not sure. Can you expand on the question, George, a little bit? I'm not sure I understand. Or do you understand that, Linda?
Well, from the point of view that I might refine it a little bit to say what kind of scenarios, I think maybe George is asking about, kind of different types of selling. But for me, anytime I'm asking somebody to look at a different idea, whether it be an opinion, whether it be a process, whether it be a product, I'm selling them on the benefits of that. So again, I want to look from their point of view. If I can't figure out how it's going to benefit them, then I'm going to be coming from a pretty weak position. If I can't think of what their challenges may be, then how am I really helping them? And if I can't find a way to make it easy for them to take those options or those actions, how does my idea really work for them? So let's see if George has any more clarification, if that addressed his question.
I think the clarification he's asking is in terms of industry and sectors. Are there any particular industries and sectors that respond better than others industries and sectors? But I think your answer kind of cleared it up. Go ahead.
Well, and I can punctuate it by one last comment, is that any industry that requires communication is great, because so long as you communicate at their level. So I do presentation redesign for lawyers who, as you know, are very well versed with words, but I still have to get them to step out of their world and put their ideas into the language of their clients. I also, as you see, I've done a bunch of work in the construction sector, which is not an industry that is overly fond of a lot of words. They like really, straightforward. Again, same principle. We put the presentation into their language and they respond extremely well.
Great. Thank you for that. I don't see any other questions coming in. George, thank you. Thanks for that, George.
Great
Appreciate
question.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think officially therefore the webinar is over. Thank you again, Linda, for that. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a series of webinar coming up for December and January and February. So go to our website at thesmallbusinesscenter.com to sign up for those webinars. And if you have not yet been a member of our LinkedIn group, you may want to consider doing that. Any last word from you, Linda?
No, just again a thank you, and to the gentleman that said that he'll want to, watch this over and over again. I do believe that you've recorded this, and so that is the opportunity to be able to kind of fast forward through the sections that to the sections you want to particularly review, and definitely use the information over and over again. Thank you.
Yes, yes, we are recording it, and hopefully it is recorded properly. We do sometimes get into technical challenges with our recordings. As soon as I know that the recording is done properly, I will email you the link to that as well. It does take us about 24 hours, so it will be somewhere about Friday afternoon, Friday early evening, Pacific time, when I will be able to send you that link. In the meantime, if you have any questions, either email Linda or email myself, and we'll go through that. Thank you again, Linda, for your help today, and thank you to all our members for joining us. Hope to see you next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.